In this video, I'll show you some tricks to get your Lumion renderings looking super duper. So here we have a Lumion scene, and I'm gonna show you a few enhancements that I think would help out. So first of all, I'm going to be in the photos mode, and I'm just going to take a new photo without any effects on it. So here's the original and here's the new. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to do a sun study to determine where the sun angles would normally come from. So I'm going to go to the effects window, then architectural tab, and then sun study, and then click on the edit and just give it a location that's similar to where it would be in the world. Now, as the sun rises and sets, it would be coming from the correct direction. So I can kind of see, I can change the month, the time of the year. So I can kind of see, okay, this would be an early morning sun angle. And then when it gets later in the day and it sets in the west, I can see what kind of sun angles I might get from that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that I'm in a kind of a morning shot, but instead of using a sun study, I'm going to just use a regular sun. So I'm going to go to the lighting tab and click sun, and then I'm going to delete the sun study because I want to control the sun exactly. So it might not be 100% accurate, but I just want to be able to tweak it a little bit, but just have the same basic angle that I had from the sun study. Maybe turn the brightness down a little bit. And then next I want to add an effect of the real sky. So I'll choose the sky I want. I'll go to a morning because I'm doing a morning shot. And I'm going to turn the brightness up on the sky itself. But the thing is, I like the sky, but I lost my nice shadows on the ground from these plants and from the objects, because the shadows are following the sky, but since the sun is hidden by these trees, I can't get any shadows. So there's a little trick that if you go to your effects stack and you move the sun, click this little white arrow pointing up, and you have the sun on the top of the stack above the real sky. So now I can adjust my sky, have it wherever I want, and as much brightness or any kind of sky I want that I like, but also I can adjust the sun independently of the sky. So I can basically pick my shadows and pick my sky separately, and then combine them using this, but the sun has to be on top of the real sky for that trick to work. Now, the next thing I want to do to enhance this is add a reflection filter. So it's in a few different spots, but it's right here in lighting too. So I definitely want to turn on enable speed ray, and then I'll turn it to high quality. So if you can notice, it's really subtle details, but like in these little metal pieces, it gets really nice little reflections. But for the big reflections, like as if in this water, this big pool and this little waterfall here, I'm going to add an active plane. So I click on add active plane, click on the plus button, and I'm going to, when it turns green, that means I can click and add a plane. Then I'll add another one for this waterfall here, and I'm going to turn the plane margins up, and then click on the OK in the bottom right corner. Now, as you can see, the reflections are much nicer. You can really start to see the waterfall and the objects reflecting in the water in the sky. So in order to, if I go to my build mode, I lose my reflections. because that's only an effect that works in photo mode. So if I go to photo mode and I want to adjust my materials but with the reflection showing, I can click the build effects, which is up here in the top left corner of the photo. So now I can still edit the model and the materials, but I can still have my nice reflections. So I'll click on the materials button and I'll select on the water, and I'm going to turn the reflection all the way up as high as it goes. I'm going to turn the color density up a little bit so that it's a little bit more stable and the reflections are a little more defined. And then I'm going to turn the wave scale down a little bit and the wave height down a little bit. It's all based on your personal preference of how windy it is. The more windy it will be, you know, the more wavy it'll be. And then I'm going to adjust this as well, do the same thing to the pool. I'm going to turn off the foam because I think that just kind of distracts. You may disagree, you may want to have it on, but I'm just going to turn it off. I'm going to turn off all the foam and border displacement. I'll leave it on a little bit. I think it looks good with a little bit of border displacement, but not much. And I think that looks a lot better. I might darken the water just a little bit. But I don't want to mess with it too much. I think that looks pretty good for now. Okay, so we'll say okay, click the checkbox to save all those material changes. So now if we compare the two, I think we got some nice shadows. We got some nice reflections going. And then what we can do is we can add some lighting effects. So hyperlight is a good one to add. And I'm just going to move it down in the stack. I'm going to keep the sun on top, then the real sky, and then the hyperlight will be next. And then I have to click enable in preview and then click in the preview. And what it does is it adds some bounce lighting so it gets a little more realistic. I'll turn it up just a little bit. You can see more bounce lighting. So now another effect that will add more realistic lighting is skylight. So I can add that. I'll move that down in the stack. And when I click on this, you can see it usually adds a little bit too much of a bluish tint. It doesn't look too bad right now. I might turn the saturation down and the brightness up. Let's see what that does. Let's see how this looks. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to turn the saturation all the way down. And now I also want to enhance the shadows, so I'm going to add a shadow effect. I'll move that down the stack a little bit. Actually, I'll go all the way down with it. So I can turn on fine detail shadows. That's always a really good idea. And then I can turn on soft shadows. And then where it says Omni Shadow, I can turn that up, and what you can see is it darkens the shadow where the darker parts of the shadow are, where the objects meet the ground. And to me, it adds a lot more realism to the shadows. now what I want to do is I want to add a sharpness enhancement. So I'll go to my enhancement tab, and then not this much sharpness, but just a little bit, like 10 to 15%, just to bring a little sharper image. And then this next one is just my personal preference. You can take this or leave it. I like to go into the concept tab and add an outline. And this is definitely washed out, but what I can do is I can turn the transparency up, which will get rid of that washed watercolor look. And then where the overdraw, it just makes extended lines. I'm going to turn that all the way down. And then you can see when I turn the lines up, so everything has an outline, which is nice for sketches, but even for renderings, I like to have just a little bit of an outline, not much, just again like 10 to 15%, and then it just gives a little bit of enhancement around the edges of your objects. And I think it looks a little nicer for renderings, because sometimes renderings just look a little bit flat and washed out, and anything you can do to kind of enhance and make things pop a little more. But again, this is personal preference. You may or may not like that. You just have to render it with different effects and just see what you like better. I'm probably going to add, I could add like maybe a bloom to give it kind of a, not that much, but just again, just like a little bit, to give it a little bit of a pop. It also washes out the image a little bit, so it really depends on how you want it to look. I may turn the sun brightness down. Now what I want to do is add, on the enhancements tab, I add a color correction, and this is where you can fine tune the image, so you can turn the temperature and the tint, the brightness, the contrast. So if I turn the brightness and contrast up, I'll get a lot more enhanced image. Let's see what that looks like. And so definitely you can play around with this, give it more or less saturation, and then just really tweak it to however you like it. Okay, so now I've done about as much as I can do with just placing effects on the scene to enhance it. I really want to mess with the materials next. So some of these materials are accurately representing the tiling and the colors of the materials that should be there, but I think the textures are a little bit too low resolution to really get a good render. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to enhance the resolution of the textures themselves. So let's save this project. And what we're going to have to do is find the original textures that were used on the 3D model that was brought into Lumion. So I have a folder with all the original textures here. So this one is for the stone, and you can see it's pretty low resolution. If I hover over it, it's like 1400 pixels, and that's not that much. A standard resolution nowadays for textures is 4K, which is more or less 4000 pixels wide. So we really want to get up to that quality. And then we've got the stone gravel here. That's very low resolution, and then the stone. And you know, years ago, these are standard resolutions. That's why some of these these 3D modeling programs have these textures in them, but they really need to be updated for more modern technology. So just for example, this is a photo of uh, of a project, and this is kind of what I'm using as my base reference. So this stonework here is what I'm trying to kind of mimic, and then this stone up here, even though this is a lighter stone, it's not as dark and orangey color, I still want to get that kind of quality. I want to get a higher quality texture to match closer to this real world image. So the first thing I'm going to do is use a software called Gigapixel AI, and what this does is it uses artificial intelligence to up resolution any image, and it gives you a side-by-side comparison to the original and then the new. And if you just do an up-res in Photoshop, for example, it's going to be pixelated and it's going to get blurry. So let me find, so I'm going to do 3 different textures: the stone, the pebbles, and this tile stone here. I'm going to open all 3 of those, and so I'm seeing my side-by-side comparison. So you can see this side looks very blurry, and this side is the AI up-res image. And there's different settings you can try and see which one you like the best. That's a little bit too stark. I think the low-res version works the best so far. Oh, this one looks good too. I think I like this one the best, so I'm just going to up-res it. I'm going to do that to all 3 images. And it's going to save the up-res in the same format as the original, in the same folder. It's just going to be at 4K. This one here is going to be 8K. So we may, in Photoshop, we can bring the scale down because they kind of overdid it with that one. So let's go into Photoshop, and we've got our new textures here. So I'm going to make a new folder and just put the old textures into that folder, and then I'm going to rename the up-res, and because it adds more characters, I'm just going to delete those characters. So now it has the exact same name, so the 3D model will reference these new up-res textures. So let's bring those into Photoshop and just see what we got to work with here. So now they're excuse me. Now they're much more higher resolution. I may do a couple enhancements, like this one. I could do maybe a sharpen filter and adjust the levels slightly, so get the shadows to be a little bit darker, the highlights to be a little bit brighter. It's all personal preference. I think I'm going to call that one good, so I'm going to save it as a, actually I just want to see about the color really quick. I think I like that color better there. Okay, so let's save that as, I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file so that I can preserve the image, and then I'm going to compress it back into a JPEG. I'm going to do that for all 3, but for these floor tiles, I'll do a little more work on enhancing them, because I think that the grout lines are too big compared to our photo reference, and I want to get those a little bit to be a little more accurate. So I'm gonna save these JPEGs. This one I may end up using a Lumion texture instead of this stone. So for now, I'm just going to, I'll sharpen it a little bit. Maybe use a smart blur filter. To reduce some of the noise. And then I'm going to save that as a Photoshop file. And then save it as a JPEG. And I can overwrite the original file because I have the Photoshop that I can always go back to if I want to modify it. But I'll just put these Photoshop files in this other folder here because I don't really need it right now. So for this one, I want to match these tiles better. So I want to get the grout lines to be smaller and then the rock itself to be a little bit smoother texture. So what I have is I have a couple other textures that I found that I can use to enhance this. So this one I'm going to use just to steal the grout lines. So I'm going to pull it over here and then adjust the size of it. I'll make it a little bit transparent so I can see what I'm working with. So I want to get these grout lines to be the correct size, the same size as these tiles. And then I can just copy them around where they need to go. So I'll take these grout lines and I will copy them over. Let's see here. I'm just gonna duplicate this part of the image, left and right. So to do this, I just select the part of the image I want, and then I hold down Control Alt, and then I just move a copy over. So before I do that, I'm going to copy, let's see, I'm going to move this down, or actually, I want to move this one up. To align with that grout line. And then I'll copy this one down. This is the little bit where it's just takes a little time messing with it. I'm going to delete the inner parts of this texture because I don't need those parts. I'm going to replace it with a different image. I just want the grout line, so let's delete this part here. So basically, I'll probably just take this one whole rectangle and just start duplicating it. Just copy and paste it around. Maybe rotate it a little bit so it has some variation. And then I'll copy, now that I have a whole row, I can copy this up to the other rows. Okay, I think that's pretty, let's see here. Okay, I think this is pretty good. Should be close enough. Okay, so I've got my grout lines. Now I have another texture that I think would be good to help fill in the surface of the stone tiles. Which is this one right here. So I can start copying and pasting this texture inside here. And I'll adjust the color of the grout lines. Try to get everything to match up properly. I'll also adjust the color of this image before I copy it. Make it a little darker. Yeah, I think that looks better. So I can take this tile, I can duplicate it a couple times. And flip it around. And then I'll copy a different tile. Bring this in here. can also adjust the levels so it gives a little variation between the tiles. Okay, we just need one more. Okay, so we have a little bit of a problem, I can tell, with this. This should not have a grout line on both sides of the image, because then it'll look like two lines really close together. So now I just have to find that layer, stretch it out a little, and then we're done. Okay. So I can turn all these, merge all these into one layer. And then I have the grout lines on another layer. So let's just save that. That should be good. We can always tweak it later if we want to. So we'll save it as a Photoshop file. Actually, let's see what the resolution is. Image size. It's too big, so let's reduce it down to, I know I said 4K. Let's just do, let's see what if we do percentage, 50%. Okay, we'll just reduce it by 50%. We don't want to overload the computer. So that's a full resolution right there. That looks pretty good. Save the Photoshop file. And then flatten the image. And we'll save that as a JPEG. Okay, so now let's go back into our Lumion model and let's click on the textures tab, click on this texture here, and we'll say standard texture. Now where it says color, we click on this color box, and then here's the map, and we can change out the map it's using. You can change it in the 3D software, or you can change it in Lumion, either way. So we're going to update it with our new texture that we just created in Photoshop, and I think that looks a lot more accurate to the photo reference. Now what we want to do is we want to add a little bit of glossiness and bumpiness like it does in real life. So to do that, to do the bumpiness, where this blue box is, click on that. That's the normal map, and the normal map that has here may or may not be very good, so I like to delete this out first by double clicking this trash can, and then click this magic wand and create a brand new one, just to make sure it's clean and it's the right image, it's using the correct image we want. And then where it says relief, we can turn that all the way up. And where it says gloss, we'll turn that up. And then reflectivity, we can adjust that. And it will look better if we go into our photo view. So here's our photo view, and what we want to do is we want to make sure we go to our reflection effect and add a plane onto that surface. So click on the plus to add a new plane, just to make sure that that has a plane. It looks like it already has a plane, so we should be good. So if we go into build with effects button and then click on that material, we can play with it. And here's the reflectivity. That's way too reflective. But we can adjust how much bumpiness, how much relief it has, and the glossiness, and the reflectivity. So something like that might be good. You can also add a little bit of displacement. I wouldn't add too much because it looks kind of weird if you add a lot. Just a little bit. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. So yeah, it's getting there. Okay, let's update the stone material with the high res texture we made. So click on the materials tab, click on the material, click on standard, and then click the color box and reload it with the high res. There we go. And then let's redo this bump map. Delete the old bump map or normal map. Create a new one, and then we can adjust the reflectivity, the glossiness, add a little bit of displacement. Okay, now we can work on this gravel texture. So there's two things. We could do the same thing and just update it with the high res version, or we could try to find a Lumion texture and we could see which one we like better. So let's update the high res. Remake the normal map, and then give it more relief. Add some displacement. And we could also, turn this to be a dark color and then click the colorization button if we wanted to darken it a little bit, or make it a little more orange, or you can mess with the color a little bit here. And if it still looks like it's a little bit too flat, you just don't like that texture, we can try to click on material library and just go to outdoor and stone and try to find a stone. Like, it might not be the exact material we're looking for, but it may or may not work for what you want. And if it doesn't work that good, you can always just go back to the original texture and mess with that. So either way, um, and also I think this texture, this tile here was kind of low res, and I think there's some good tile textures. Now if I go to the indoor tab and go to tile, I could find something like this. It's a little bit more high-res texture, and then click edit material. I can adjust the size. And adjust the relief, the glossiness. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. Let's see, add a little bit of glossiness to this one. Redo the normal map. Okay, let's see how our view is looking now. Yeah, that's looking really good. I like it so far. Okay, so the last thing I want to do for this demo is these flowers here and over here, like these yellowish flowers, are not quite the right scale of flower. So I'm going to show how to use different types of flowers to create your own flower bundle basically and get something closer to what should be there. So let's save this because we got it to a good spot right now. We'll save the file. Okay, so first I'm gonna go look at our photo reference for that flower, and the one that we're trying to get for this one is right here, this marigold one. So there's a lot more flowers and they're a lot smaller and they kind of fan out. So first we'll just delete the ones that are there. We'll go to the content library, click on nature, click on the delete button, and just delete out these flowers for now. And then double click on the nature, the tree, and go to flower and go all the way to the last tab, the last page, and the last flower is the yellow iris. So it looks kind of big, but what we're going to do is we're going to start out with this and we're just going to use the scale button and scale it down to about right there, and then use the move tool and move it down to about there, and then use the move free and hold down shift to just slide it over to the edge. And now holding shift and alt, I can alt shift a copy and move it, just slide it out to the side, and I'm gonna make a nice little ring of these smaller flowers. Then I'm going to move one towards the center a little bit and make that bigger so that it's kind of raised up in the air. I could even raise it up if I want to, like right there. Now I'm going to take that one and Shift Alt move a copy in a smaller circle, and then do one right in the middle and just move that up even further up. So I'm creating what looks kind of like a shrubbery with lots of flowers. So it's given the kind of the resemblance of a lot of fluted flowers. And I could scale that up a little bit bigger if I wanted to. I don't know if I really want to. I might want to make these middle ones smaller and just move them up higher. Let's see what that looks like. If I make these smaller and then just move them in the up direction. I think I like that a little bit better. So now what I want to do is I want to Control select all of these and then go in the right top corner and click Add Current Selection to Group. And what I want to do is I don't want to stop right there because the pivot point is down here below the ground and that's going to mess me up. So I'm going to click on the Edit Group button and then click the Move Vertical, and I'm going to move the pivot point vertically up to meet the ground. So now when I click this OK checkbox in the bottom right corner of the screen, it creates my group, but the pivot point is in the correct spot. That's really important, and I'll show you why. So let's save this group with it selected, and we'll go to I made a folder called Plants, and I'm going to call it Mount Lemon Marigold. So let's save that. Now I can go into my groups, double click on my groups button and click on my plants folder, and I've got the one that I just made in there, and I can just single click and just add it really quickly to the other parts of the model. And I can rotate it and move it and scale it to fit, because now it's a saved group. And if I wanted to delete some of these that are kind of intersecting here, I can select on the group, not that group, this group here, and I can click Ungroup. Do that for this side too, and then I could click on the Nature tab and the Delete button, and I can delete some of these that are kind of in the middle where this cactus is that I don't want it. I don't want these in here. It's a little too cluttered. Okay, so that's pretty good. So now what I can do is I can just delete these over here, and then I'm going to do a select all, and then deselect the cactus, and let's see if that works. That should work. If I hold Alt Shift, I can move a copy of all those flowers over here, and it doesn't quite line up because this space is a little bit smaller, but I can just move these over, slide them back over like that. Okay. Let's go back to our view and see how that looks now. Okay, that's looking better. Um, so now these other yellow flowers in the back here, they are a different type of yellow flower. Let's go ahead and build that flower here. So our photo reference for that one is right here, the Gold Mound Lantana. And that's kind of a more fluffy, kind of a ball flower. So let's delete what's here. Oops. I don't want to delete the vines. And let's click on our nature tab, and then not the last page, but one backwards, there's these kind of flowers that are very similar to what we're trying to get. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make an outer ring first. Then I'm going to do an inner ring. And then some in the middle. So I gotta select these ones in the middle. I can control select all these and then just move them up and start to, oops, wrong button. Just kind of start to mound it up. Maybe scale them a little bit up to fill it in. Actually, I'll probably scale all of them up a little bit. Just control select, scale it like that. And then now I just need the center batch. Move in the vertical like that. Now I just need the very center pieces and then move those up even more like that. Okay, so let's select all of these, turn that into a group, save that group as Gold Mound Lantana. Now I'm just going to delete all of these flowers here and just replace them with the one we just made. Go to double click my groups, go to plants, and just add them here. And we're done. Go back to our view. And that is the end of our demo.